Did you know that the United States made more money last year than the whole world did back in 1993? This amazing accomplishment in just 30 years shows how powerful the USA is in the global economy, and it looks like this will keep going for a long time. But things are now changing. Some new strong competitors are becoming just as important. If we look at how much money a country can really spend, China is actually ahead of the USA. This means there's a big change happening. Even though we might not be sure about China's economic numbers, they're not the only ones challenging the USA's position. Nevertheless, this transformation is not necessarily inevitable, according to influential economists who advocate drastic measures to preserve U.S. economic dominance. Proposals encompass shutting off external trade and defaulting on debt, aimed at maintaining the nation's economic dominance. They argue that decisions made in the latter part of the 20th century contributed to a decline in the USA's global competitiveness, coupled with other issues like rising income inequality, stagnant wages, and diminished financial stability for average citizens. While these arguments might appear extreme and unconvincing to some, they offer valuable insights into the intricate interplay of global cooperation and competition that has significantly shaped our modern world over the past 40 years. You see, over the last 4 decades, global economic output, or gross domestic product, GDP, has surged considerably, achieving its fastest growth rate in both absolute and relative terms. This growth is especially significant as several countries grapple with entering the global middle class due to substantial debt burdens and economic mismanagement. However, the combined worldwide economy remains robust, propelled by major economies exhibiting vigorous expansion, including Indonesia, India, China, and the still resilient USA. The concept of globalization often serves as an explanation for this recent prosperity. The exchange of skills, ideas, and technologies is driving global prosperity. It's important how these factors actually drive global prosperity. The commonly cited explanation revolves around a synergy of rising average worker productivity and the principle of comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is when an economy has a certain advantage over another company, like cheaper manufacturing or a more talented workforce. For instance, between China and the USA, China can generate a higher quantity of manufactured goods using the same amount of money as the USA, granting it a comparative advantage in manufacturing those specific goods. Globalization has mostly been good for the world, but the benefits haven't been spread out evenly. Some big winners are global companies that make use of cheaper labor and get to sell their stuff in more places. Also, people in developing countries are better off now, moving from farming to better jobs, education, and healthcare. And we can all buy products for less because of a more efficient and therefore cheaper production process. This is not taking into account the recent surge in prices because of supply chain issues. However, there are some who haven't gained much from globalization, and that's the US government itself. You see, although the US's huge military budget has always been extremely high, nowadays a good amount of it is used to protect global trade routes and make sure important trading areas are stable. These duties go beyond just trade, which means no matter what happens, the US will spend a lot of money on defense. But there's a worry that this spending lets other countries, even ones that aren't really friends, enjoy safe oceans and a generally calm global situation. More people who lose out from globalization are regular folks who have lost their job because their job was replaced by cheaper labor in developing countries. They end up struggling to make a living. In big cities like New York, Vancouver, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Sydney, Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Beijing, prices for houses and land have shot up a lot in the last few decades. Notably, economists like Dr. Moyo say that a big part of why there's a huge gap between how much people earn and how much property costs is because of a small group who've made the most of globalization's good parts. These people, who make a lot of money, have invested a lot of money in real estate and leveraged their net worth to buy even more real estate. There is a relatively small group of people who own a lot of real estate, which make it harder for the average Joe to buy a nice house as well because of the shortage in housing. His income is not rising nearly as hard as the real estate market. Another challenge arises from the fact that technological superiority isn't guaranteed in the context of global business. Traditionally, advanced economies like the USA have shared their technological expertise with developing nations, enabling them to manufacture consumer goods. Yet today, global firms from these developing nations are narrowing the gap. China, for instance, is not only fostering its own tech companies, but also leading in electric vehicle manufacturing. While this trend benefits the global economy overall, it erodes the competitive edge historically held by these economies. This trade-off, although yielding slightly cheaper consumer goods, comes at the potential cost of building a stronger domestic economy. Economists who share this view think that having cheaper consumer goods might not be great if they slow down the economy overall. After World War II, about 60% of the money the US made came from people buying things. The rest came from government spending, business investing, and exports. But starting from the 1980s, globalization really took off. People spending money became even more important, making up about 68% of the money the US makes now. This increase might not seem huge, just 8%, but it actually means the other parts of the economy, like business investing and government spending, have shrunk from 40% to 32%, which is 20% less. This shows that the US has focused a lot on making things for people to buy, instead of spending on things like building stuff or supporting important services. Buying things is good, as it improves our lives, but spending too much on things we don't really need, and not enough on building and supporting important things, can have bad effects on the economy in the long run. Investing in important things like roads, bridges, and new industries can make the economy better in the future. Countries like China, Indonesia, and many others are investing heavily in big projects like new ports, rail networks, power plants, and tourist spots. This helps their economies grow stronger. Even though these projects cost a lot of money that could have gone to regular people, they are thinking long-term and believe it will make their economies even better later on. Another challenge pertains to debt. Advanced Western economies, including the US, are indebted to certain developing economies, particularly one. Simultaneously, household debt has increased due to income disparities accelerated by globalization. People striving to cope with rising housing costs and living expenses, while grappling with stagnant wages, are resorting to increased borrowing to bridge the gap. This debt is notably concentrated in real estate, which individuals commonly perceive as their primary investment. This notion is further supported by various governments in advanced economies through tax incentives and subsidies aimed at artificially enhancing real estate as an investment avenue, thereby overshadowing alternatives like stocks, which could fund productive ventures. Even if you hold different viewpoints on these economists' theories, their insights offer a captivating window into the extensive impact of decisions concerning global trade and collaboration on various facets of modern economies. These impacts might not be immediately apparent, but they underscore how globalization has influenced diverse aspects of our societies. If countries like the USA find themselves disadvantaged by globalization, potential solutions could center on promoting investment over consumption, without favoring one investment type over another. Additionally, enacting policies that safeguard local industries, especially those generating substantial employment, could help disperse economic benefits more broadly rather than concentrating them in the hands of a select highly skilled few. Already, a trend of reshoring and onshoring has been gaining momentum since even before 2020, a trend accelerated by the global pandemic. Advancements in automation are also anticipated to reduce reliance on outsourced labor, as machines begin producing even technically intricate items at lower costs than the cheapest human laborers. However, the solution for which economists like Dr. Moyo gain significant attention is an extreme one, advocating for the USA to isolate itself from the world, default on its debts, and focus on complete self-sufficiency. This might seem radical, yet it resonates with the US's historical approach pre-World War II and before the 1980s. During these periods, the US experienced growth rates similar to its current ones, while today, its capacity for self-sufficiency has further improved due to self-reliance in energy production. While such a shock would undoubtedly harm the American economy, it could potentially inflict even more significant damage on competing economies. China, for instance, heavily relies on holding US debt and supplying cheap imports to the US. Losing both these aspects instantly could severely impact China's economy, jeopardizing the stability of its current regime. In reality, Dr. Moyo likely recognizes that these extreme measures are improbable to be implemented. Their inclusion may have been aimed at initiating dialogue or garnering attention for their book sales. Nevertheless, even if regarded as a mere thought experiment, this extreme proposition prompts even fervent globalist economists to reassess who the ultimate beneficiaries of globalization truly are. So guys, what do you think? Should the United States isolate itself? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, do well to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more.